And my triple cup, that's 2 times 2. Man, this shit dogging in the wartime, so
you know I'm ballin', usual like Kobe.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the third episode of Dime Dropper. Before we start, as always, make sure to follow us on social media at Dime Dropper Pod on Twitter and Instagram, as well as YouTube at Dime Dropper Podcast. And of course, follow on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about a very controversial topic that so many people seem to be talking about on a daily basis. Who is the GOAT, the greatest of all time? Now, you see, the GOAT is a subjective matter that changes depending on who you ask because of what aligns with each person. Certain players, the reason why people like players is because they resonate with them for whatever reason. Maybe they remind them of themselves, or maybe when they play basketball, they play a style similar to what you either play or what you like. For me, I was always taught about one goal, and that is a simple quote by a man named Herm Edwards, and we're going to restate it a lot during this podcast. You play to win the game. Ultimately, I was taught you play to win the game. A concept that I didn't fully understand in the beginning when I first started playing basketball, because I was more, when you first start playing basketball, trying to show people that you're good. But obviously, when you become better and you get that approval from people, then the goal is to win. It doesn't really matter what you do. And for all these NBA players who have already made it in their professions, and of course, there's levels to everything. A lot of times people want to burst onto the scene and make a name for themselves. And eventually, when everyone knows who they are, the goal that separates the all-time greats is winning. Now, I know what you're going to think. Why isn't Bill Russell the GOAT if it's all about winning? Well, if somebody were to tell me that Bill Russell is the GOAT, for one, I would say that's a totally valid opinion. Now, if you're about to turn this off because I said that, I don't want you fucking listening anyway. Because what you need to understand is the reason why I'm not comparing Bill to the people that I'm going to compare today is because it was just such a different game. It's hard to compare when there's 9 teams to when there's 20 plus, or when there's no 3-point line to when there is. That's a little bit lesser than the 9 teams thing. But I'm not trying to discredit Russell and say it was harder, or easier, I should say, for him to win championships. It's just different. So the reason why I made this podcast is because there's been a lot of talk recently amongst the newer generation, I haven't heard it from anyone else, that LeBron James is starting to be considered the GOAT by many people. Now, we're going to talk about Jordan and LeBron, even though that shouldn't necessarily be the 2 people that everyone talks about with the GOAT. Why all of a sudden has it become 2 people, LeBron and Jordan, that are talked about as the GOAT? Who is coming up with these opinions? The media. And what do LeBron and Jordan have in common? They were both the most popular players in their eras, or actually just the most popular basketball players to ever live. Now, of course, Magic and Larry changed the popularity of the game, but none were so publicized the same way we have Michael Jordan and the way we have LeBron. I mean, in the age of social media, literally, LeBron will go to the bathroom or eat a sandwich and it'll be posted on Bleacher Report. LeBron is having Taco Tuesday. Like, it's so OD at this point. It's like, we don't need to know what LeBron's doing every second. But because everybody fiends his freaking cock so hard, then everybody clicks on everything. So it was the same with Jordan. Now I'm going to differentiate why that's warranted and why LeBron's a little overdone. Since when did LeBron surpass all the greats of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Russell or Magic Johnson? I don't know. It's what the media wants to push. Now, another guy, Kobe Bryant. If you look at any list, the media has him very low. If you ask most players, a lot of them say they don't even think LeBron is better than Kobe. And I wonder why that is, that Kobe doesn't have a great reputation with the media. But I think you guys all know, so I'm not going to get into it. And who decides who wins MVP, the award that Kobe has won the least of? The media. So let's talk about why the media has made this a thing and why it shouldn't ever be a thing. So let's start talking about this. And the reason why I feel as though I'm the most qualified person to make this debate, look behind me if you're watching the visual version of this podcast. I have a LeBron jersey up behind me, one of my 2 LeBron jerseys from his original tenure in Cleveland, alongside my LeBron sculpture that my friend made, a LeBron plaque, a LeBron action figure, and to top it all off, a LeBron fat hit on my wall that was there for like 10 years because he was my favorite player. Because as I alluded to in my first episode, I was a Clipper fan, but Elton Brand wasn't necessarily the most marketable name. I didn't like Kobe. I loved this guy from Cleveland, LeBron James, who was absolutely electrifying, and I started liking him because of his dunks. There was nothing more that I liked than LeBron James going one-on-none on a fast break, just mixing it up, throwing a reverse, a windmill, whatever you want. And then he could pass too, and he was so unselfish. He always talked about his teammates and never bragged about himself. And that's what got me to love him so much. So whenever the Clippers were eliminated from the playoffs, I would root for LeBron like he was my own player. Was I a bronze-sexual, you might ask? I don't think I was that crazy to the point where I ignored a lot of the things that happened and the things that he did wrong. Ultimately, I was still about winning and less about stats, which LeBron fans fiend like no other, sitting there jacking off to basketball reference stats. Well, I'm going to talk about stats mixed with accolades, mixed with the goal that is winning today. Now, the first argument that LeBron fans use over Jordan, but he's a better all-around player. He's a better passer. He's a better rebounder. Well, then why isn't Larry Bird better than Jordan? Because he's a better passer and a better rebounder. Larry Bird is a white guy that's really slow. Well, you know what, you fucking idiots? You're acting like there were no athletic guys back in the day. I was watching footage, and I was talking about it in my last episode, about 1980 footage, of Larry Bird when he was a rookie, playing against one of the most athletic players that I've ever seen play in a full game, Julius Erving, the Doctor. And Larry Bird is a rookie, white guy, same white guy, busting his ass. This is a guy that used to get blocks on jumpers just because of his vertical. And he is scoring from everywhere on the court as a rookie. There's a reason why all these incredible athletes of the past speak so highly of Bird. Do some fucking research. So the reason why Jordan is viewed better than him is because of winning. He has more rings, amongst other things as well. So let's just talk about, when we talk about Jordan and LeBron, we have to look at their careers comparatively. And I'm going to be as honest as I can with this through each of their years, because a lot of times LeBron fans like to couple in all his years in Cleveland as if they were one same storyline, which couldn't be further from the truth. So we're going to dissect it right now, starting with their rookie season. So I'm about to take you guys on a timeline. Follow along and listen closely. Let's start out with Michael Jordan's rookie season. The Bulls were 27-55, a shitty franchise before he arrived. And when he did, they immediately increased to 11 wins to 38-44. Now, who did he have on his team, you might ask? At the time, he had Orlando Woolridge, who averaged 19 points a game in the season prior to MJ arriving. A good player, never an all-star, but a solid scorer for his time. And then, when Michael came, he increased his average to 23. But Michael didn't make anyone better, right? Okay. Michael, that won Rookie of the Year, averaged 28 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, 6 assists on 51% shooting. That's a rookie. And of course he won Rookie of the Year. Now, remember when we compare Jordan to LeBron here, rookie years, LeBron was coming out of high school. So he's not necessarily as NBA ready as Jordan, but it's going to come in handy later down the line when he possibly will get 3 more years of his career at least. So, let's look at the Eastern Conference comparatively, because a lot of people like to say that LeBron did better in the beginning. Well, the Eastern Conference is not the same Eastern Conference that I grew up watching back when Jordan played. For example, there were 3 teams above 58 wins in the East. One of those was the Milwaukee Bucks, who Michael Jordan played in the first round. Well, who did they have, you might ask? Well, let me fucking tell you. Terry Cummings, who was a 2-time All-Star and averaged 23 points and 23 and 9 this season. And then we had a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, the first ever winner of the Defensive Player of the Year, Sidney Moncrief, who was an All-Star 5 out of the 11 seasons that he played basketball. And they beat the Bulls because they're a very good team that is not talked about because they never won the whole thing. But they were good enough to make it in 2K, so next time you turn on your 2K game, look at the 80s Bucks. Anyway, Mike loses 3-1. He makes the playoffs his first year, that's it. Now we go to LeBron's first year. The Cavs were 17-65 before he arrived, and when he came, they increased their win total by 18 to 35-47, which is very impressive. And the Eastern Conference, comparatively, the second place team had 54 wins, but the third place team only had 47, which lets you know the Eastern Conference that LeBron is coming into. Now, we'll look at the stats. LeBron, 21 points a game, 5.5 boards, 6 assists on 42% shooting. The only stat he led his team in was points his first year. Now, who did he play with? Of course, Carlos Boozer, who we remember later for the Jazz. He wasn't as good yet. He was only averaging about 15. And then Zydrunas Ilgauskas. A lot of LeBron fans have started to laugh because Big Z was known for nothing besides LeBron, right? Wrong. The year before LeBron came, he was actually an all-star. And then his scoring average decreased when LeBron came. I wonder why. Now, yes, I'm well aware that when you get better players, scoring averages decrease for certain guys. I'm well aware. But just for the sake of argument, everybody wants to say LeBron makes everybody better. I want an argument that supports that. There's a difference between making everyone win, making a team better, and making individuals better. Now, Big Z averaged 17 points a game the season before LeBron came, and he was an all-star on a shitty team. What does that tell you? That maybe the East was so bad that he made it even with that. And of course, they didn't make the playoffs the first year. So, that's season 1. Now we go to season 2. The famous injury that we saw in the last dance where Mike broke his foot, but still wouldn't take tanking for an answer. He wanted to push for the playoffs. His stats got ruined that year because he was playing on 14-minute restrictions, so you can't really look at his stats because they look like outliers compared to everything else. The Bulls drafted Charles Oakley and got Iceman George Gervin. I know what you're thinking. Oh my fucking god, the Iceman? Well, this isn't the 1980 MVP Iceman. This was Iceman in the last year of his career, averaging 16 a game. Now, the Bulls somehow, the East was very top-heavy back then. It wasn't too great overall, but it was really hard to even win a playoff series, especially if you were a lower seed. The Bulls got the 8th seed because they were an abysmal 30-52 without Mike, and played against one of the greatest teams ever. A super team in its own right. Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, a former Finals MVP in Dennis Johnson, I bet y'all didn't know that, and one of the great role players to ever play, and we're going to hear his name a lot during this podcast, Danny Ainge. And the Celtics, the 86 Celtics, who are also in 2K, are one of the greatest teams single year in NBA history. They ended up winning the championship and went 40-1 at Boston Garden. Just to give you a little example of who he played in the first round, Michael Jordan. But that didn't stop Mike from giving it his all. And something I forgot to mention. Michael Jordan increased his scoring average in the playoffs, the first year. And one thing that's consistent with all great stars, if you are really a star, you hear the guys on TNT talk about this all the time, your averages have to go up in the playoffs. You have to be better than what you were in the regular season if you are really a star. Prime example of this is Toronto a couple years ago with Lowry and DeRozan. Their stats always either stayed identical or dropped when they made the playoffs, thus proving that they weren't really as good of stars as everyone made them out to be. Kawhi Leonard, on the other hand, last year against Giannis Antetokounmpo, who won MVP. Giannis dropped his points per game in the conference finals by 5 points. Kawhi, on the other hand, averaged 30. One won the championship, and one is still figuring out how to do it. So that's going to be a consistent theme. Does LeBron or does Jordan increase their averages in the playoffs? Because everyone always likes to use this narrative of they didn't have enough help. Well, if you didn't have enough help, you need to give me everything. You need to improve your stats. You need to give me everything you have in the tank to show that it wasn't just your fault. Because the first person when you lose that needs to be looked at is the best player. Are they giving it their all? And if they're not, the problems start from the top. If they are, then we look at the supporting cast. In this case, Michael Jordan, as everyone knows, scored 63 points, a record that still stands to this day in the playoffs, and averaged 44 points a game for the series in which he got swept. But 44 points a game. But he got swept, he lost, it doesn't matter. Now we go to LeBron's second season. The Cavs increased their record to 42-40. The East is more spread out this year, so they still don't even make the playoffs. Actually, they lose a tiebreaker. And the only great teams in the conference are Miami and Detroit. The Cavs added Drew Gooden, who would be a piece of their run later down the line. LeBron's stats increased significantly to 27 points, 7.4 boards, and 7 assists on 42% shooting. That's pretty incredible increase for just 1 year difference. And I'm not denying his development, but I wonder what rule was implemented in 2004-05 to allow players to score a little bit easier. The outlawing of hand checking. That's a big 7 points. Let's not act like that had no implications on the future, because nowadays, look what the NBA has become 15 years after that rule was stopped. Something that Michael Jordan had to play with his entire career. Not to mention the bigs were a lot better and were packing the paint, the three-point line had just been introduced. One thing you'll notice about my comparison here is I'm not going to bring up their three-point percentages. One, because neither of them have become a great three-point shooter. LeBron only in the last couple of years. He's changed his game. Once again, a product of his environment. The three-point line was introduced in 1979. So Michael Jordan grew up most of his life not seeing that wasn't a thing, three-pointers. So even though he was still better than most in terms of shooting for scoring at that much of a clip, he wasn't one of those pure shooters like a Danny Ainge. He was a very good shooter, far better than LeBron when he first came into his career. And let's talk about LeBron's game when he first came into his career. LeBron's game reminds me a lot of a better version of Giannis. He was all athleticism, 110 miles per hour all the time. He had a very streaky jumper. He had the illusion that he could hit it, unlike Giannis, who literally you dare to shoot. But LeBron was still very streaky. You don't believe me? Well, we're going to have evidence going forward. Anyway, so that was LeBron's second year. Now we go to year number 3. Jordan loses both George Gervin and Orlando Woolridge, and he wins 40 games, loses 42, and listen to these stats. 37 points, 5 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 48% shooting, and guess what? All 82 games played. 37 points? As a third year in that era? Are you fucking kidding me? And what happens? The next best scorer on the team only averaged 14.5. But once again, the East had 4 teams with 50-plus wins. And guess who the Bulls played again? The defending champion Celtics. Once again, Jordan increased his playoff average to 36 a game. And they lost. Actually, I wouldn't even say increase. He dropped it by 1. But 36 points a game, I mean, take your pick against that team. Now we go to Cleveland. Third year. This is when it all changes. The Cavs added Larry Hughes, who had just come off averaging 22 points a game for the Wizards, who were a second-round team the year before, but he comes to an even worse team, and his averages drop by 7. I know he had injuries this season, but that's a little peculiar because LeBron makes everyone better, right? Anyway, the Cavs still also add, before we get into their record, which was 50-32, they were the only 50-win team besides Detroit and Miami, but clearly the weak link of the 3. Now, they add 2 shooters, Damon Jones and Donyell Marshall. Spot-up shooters is going to be a common theme of this episode, guys, so stay tuned for that. The Cavs win their 50 games. LeBron has an unbelievable season, 31 a game, 7 rebounds, 6.6 assists on 48% shooting. Now, you'd think that leads the league in scoring probably, but Kobe actually averaged 35 that year and led the league, and Iverson 33. For whatever reason, 06 was a lot of players averaged 30-plus for whatever reason. And this is when I come in as a fan and can give you a better opinion because I started watching basketball this season. And I've watched every single series of LeBron's career from this point forward. Actually, no, this is just every series of LeBron's career as a LeBron fan. And in this series, he was electric. A triple-double in his first game, a game-winning layup in Game 3, another game-winning layup in Game 5, and in Game 6, Damon Jones, game winner from a LeBron assist to eliminate who? A very solid Washington Wizards team with Gilbert Arenas, an all-star, Antoine Jamison, another all-star, and Caron Butler 1 year before he became an all-star. So, what does this mean? The Wizards have 3 all-star caliber players, and Cleveland just has LeBron. The Wizards probably have a better overall team, but why did the Cavs win? Because in the sport of basketball, unlike any other, there are only 5 people on the court. So one person has such an influence on the game. A player like LeBron can get the rebound, go the length of the floor, and create a basket for his team, unlike in football or unlike in soccer. So one player, oftentimes, if you play the best in the series, you will end up winning the series. And LeBron did exactly that in this series. And then he goes to the second round to play Detroit, a Detroit Pistons team that had Chauncey, Tayshaun, Rip Hamilton, Ben Wallace, and Rasheed Wallace. And somehow the Cavs are up 3-2, going back to Cleveland for Game 6. This is a chance for LeBron to end them 1 game. And what are LeBron's stats in Game 6? 32 at 11 and 5. Oh my God, that's so good. Let's look a little deeper. 8 of 20 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3, 7 turnovers, and his 15 points were off free throws. So almost half his points off free throws, which is actually surprising because the one weakness LeBron's had his entire career was free throw shooting, where he's always in the mid-70s. And Of course, they lose the momentum there, and in Game 7, the whole team only dropped 61. So LeBron had a little chance, but because his team was so much worse and they really shouldn't have even been in the position to be in that position to win, we're not going to count it against him. So let's go to year 4. The Bulls finally get Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, this is the whole flaw in your argument. The second Scottie comes, they're good. Pump the brakes a bit. Horace Grant only averaged 8 points and 5.5 rebounds coming off the bench this first year, and Scottie Pippen didn't start one game for the Bulls and was the 7th leading scorer on the team, only averaging 8 points. Mike, on the other hand, had the season of his career at this point, averaging 35, 5.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, a block and a half, shooting 53%, won Defensive Player of the Year and MVP, and played every fucking game. That is what I call greatness. And so now, who do they play? They played the Cavaliers first round. But who are they? The Cavs were never good before LeBron, right? Wrong. And this brings us to our first team that everyone likes to sleep on. Actually, second, because we talked about the Bucks. Who was the Cleveland Cavaliers' leading scorer of all time before LeBron? Well, it was a guy by the name of Brad Daugherty. He was a 5-time All-Star in his 8 years, to go alongside Larry Nance Sr., who was a 3-time All-Star as well, and of course, Mark Price, who was a 4-time All-Star. But don't worry, we'll be talking about those guys a lot as this goes on. Ron Harper was also on the team. I know you recognize the name because he won championships later with the Bulls and the Lakers. He averaged 23 points a game as a rookie. This was his second year. He missed 30 games, but he still averaged a good 16. So this is very similar to the Wizards scenario. The Cavs are the better team, way more well-rounded, but the Bulls have the better player. And once again, MJ increases his scoring average in the playoffs from 35 to 36 with equal field goal shooting, over 50% when people want to talk about LeBron being more efficient. And they beat them in 5. And then they play a series that was not talked about in The Last Dance, the first defeat to the Bad Boys, 4-1. Just for reference, those Bad Boys ended up going to the championship and losing a Game 7 in the Forum to the Lakers. The Pistons that LeBron lost to, well, they ended up losing in the next round to Dwayne Wade. And Dwayne Wade went on to win the championship and averaged 35 a game in his third year. But wait, he had Shaq though. He had Shaq. Let's pump it again. This is not the same Shaq that played with Kobe, that averaged 30 and 13 in the finals. Shaq's numbers in the finals this year were 14 points and 10 boards. Am I acting like he wasn't relevant? Am I acting like he wasn't a star? Fuck no. But 35 points a game by Wade? It's time to give him a little more credit, guys. So now we go to year 4 with Bron. They have the same record, but the East has been opened up a little bit. Dwayne Wade dislocates his shoulder, and all the supporting players in the Heat are starting to get older. So the Cavs finish with the same record as they did the previous year, but they're the second seed. Who's still the first? The Detroit Pistons. But what a lot of people don't remember about this Pistons team is they lost a very big piece. Ben Wallace, who was a multi-defensive player of the year and was gone now. So that opens it up a little bit. And LeBron beats the Wizards, and let me just clarify, the Wizards, who Gilbert Arenas and Caron Butler were both injured for the first round. They swept with ease, obviously. And then he played against the Nets, who were actually another good team, Vince Carter, Jason Kidd, and Richard Jefferson. Once again, and they beat him in 6, which makes me think, damn, I never watched this series from a Nets fan perspective. Why did Vince Carter, Jason Kidd, and RJ lose to Bron? Is it just because LeBron was so much better than them? Possibly. I mean, he definitely had to have outplayed him in the series, but maybe we're not giving the supporting cast enough credit. Nonetheless, LeBron wins and gets to the conference finals against the 1 seed. And this is straight from his Wikipedia, guys. Ready? Despite gaining some momentum in the opening games of the series against the experienced Pistons, key last-second decisions by James led to Cleveland losses in games 1 and 2 in Detroit by identical scores where Cleveland led for most of the games. Now, what they're referring to, and once again, you guys can check all my sources. I'm going to be posting every single link to most of the things I'm saying. The stats are all off Basketball Reference, but all the other things, I'm going to be posting a link to my YouTube version of the video, so you don't think I'm just capping on all this shit. But LeBron gets the ball. They're down 2. Hard drive left, gets to step on Tayshaun Prince. Basically has an open, like, semi-contested lefty layup. Rasheed Wallace is rotating over, but he is late. You have to see the clip. He is not blocking this shit. And LeBron passes it to a wide-open Daniel Marshall in the corner for 3, wide open. And he misses. And this began something that would be a recurring theme in LeBron's career of passing up the potential game-tying or game-winning shot. But the LeBron fans will say he's making the right basketball play. Well, here's the thing about the right basketball play. When you're the best player on the team and you have a layup, what's the right basketball play? This isn't the regular season where you gamble and go for the win because, it's just one game. This is the fucking conference finals. Go for the layup, especially when LeBron's ambidextrous and writes with his left hand. Anyway, it's okay, because in game 2, he gets in the exact same scenario with the same scoreline. And you know what he does? He shoots some bullshit, but he shoots. So I can't get mad at him for that. Can't be too hypocritical here. He misses. Larry Hughes gets an open foul line jumper on the rebound and misses as well. So from LeBron doing that and forcing a shot, he even got an even better shot than he got in game 1 just from being aggressive. But they go down 2-0. But the whole series now changes. LeBron and the Cavs win the games in Cleveland. And then, of course, there's the famous Game 5 where LeBron went, I should maybe even say Jordan mode here, and willed his team to victory in one of the best playoff performances ever. Now, I remember watching this game being so happy about it. And a lot of people like to think that this is when LeBron became the best player in the league. My friends, there's just something that makes you the best in anything that you do, and that is consistency. And that mentality that LeBron showed on that night has not been consistent over the course of his career. But before you say, what are you talking about? Don't worry, we're going to get there. LeBron gets to game 6 and they win the series. They somehow upset the Pistons incredibly, even though the Pistons had a better team. So now LeBron gets to the finals with, and this is where the more with less argument started. So let's dive into that. LeBron plays against the Spurs in the finals. The Spurs, who are granted better than the Pistons, but the Pistons were better than the Cavs. But LeBron's stats against the Pistons were 26 points, 9 rebounds, 8.5 assists. What are they against the Spurs? 22 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 5.7 turnovers, and he shot an abysmal 35%. Now, I know what your excuse is going to be, but his team is so much worse, Where was that against Detroit? He was able to will them to victory there, but he's not even able to get a game off San Antonio. Now, is it his fault that they lost? Fuck no. But 4-0? Now I'm going to pull up a quote from Game 4 with at the 9:51 mark of the first quarter from one of your favorite commentators, Mike Breen. James knocks down a mid-range shot, which he has not done all series. Jeff Van Gundy says, before that, he missed 16 straight shots from outside the paint. That tells you everything you need to know about what I said earlier about LeBron not being offensively polished and being mostly adrenaline. Anyway, he gets to the finals, he loses. Big overachieving season for the Cavs anyway. Now we go to year 5. The Bulls make the famous trade that trades Oakley for Cartwright, which allows Horace Grant to start at the 4, and Scottie Pippen now starts most games and averages 14 points a game. Mike takes his averages to the next level, leading the league in scoring for his 3rd straight year. Mind you, he would go on to win 7 straight scoring titles and averaged 32.5 points a game, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 54% from the field, and played every game. Now, to put that into perspective, those are Kobe Bryant level scoring numbers with LeBron rebounds and assists with his efficiency. LeBron in his entire career, and Michael Jordan can't pass apparently, LeBron James in his entire career has never had a season where he's averaged 30 plus points to go along with 8 and 8 of assists and rebounds. He's never done it. Michael Jordan did, and this is when he had the ball constantly. And guess what about his Eastern Conference this year? The 7th seed had 46 plus wins. The 7th seed. That's like the West right now. And he had to beat 2 higher seeded teams, the Cavs, and this is the year he made that famous game winner against the Cavs, the shot. Mind you, if he had missed that shot, they would have been done in the first round, but he hit it. And he also hit the shot before Craig Elo made the go-ahead layup too. So 2 buckets in the last 20 seconds of the game. Then he beat the Knicks, who are a very good team, and they're going to be a recurring theme as well, with Patrick Ewing, John Starks, who was an all-star at one point of his career, and was, even though only an all-star one time, it should tell you a lot that this team was so significant. Starks was one of their better players for years. That tells you what kind of impact he had. And of course, Mark Jackson, who does, ESPN games for us on the daily now, was one of the more underrated players in NBA history, one of the great passers of the game, was an all-star one time. Actually, it was this year, actually. And he actually is 4th all-time in assists even above Magic Johnson? Yeah, that's Mark Jackson. And of course, they had Oakley now. But the Bulls still beat them and then played against the Pistons where they lost for a second time in a row. And of course, Michael Jordan increased his playoff average again. Shift it. Now we go to the 07-08 season for LeBron. The Cavs get Ben Wallace, the guy that beat LeBron in 06, and get a spot-up shooter in Wally Szczerbiak, another spot-up shooter, and a guy that can spot-up shoot but take some pressure off LeBron in Delonte West. The East got better because of the introduction of the Big Three Celtics, and the Cavaliers get back to the second round after beating Washington for a third consecutive year. And now they take them to 7, and LeBron has an unbelievable Game 7, pushing the Celtics to the brink of defeat, but the Celtics get over the hump. I am not going to count LeBron. I'm not going to fault him at all for this one at all. I think he gave it his all in that Game 7. But to look at his season stats, they were 38-7, and in the playoffs, 28 on 41% shooting. So once again, they dropped, but we're not going to hold it against him again. And now we go to year 6 for Jordan, 89-90. Phil Jackson arrives, and you see before, his numbers were very similar to LeBron, 32-8-8, even better than LeBron, really. Why? Because the ball was always in his hands. So when you guys think that Jordan couldn't do everything like LeBron, he could, but that wasn't going to help them win games. So he needs to embrace his role, score first, and facilitate through the looks or the attention you get as a scorer. And Scottie Pippen, who's a lot more similar to LeBron in play style than Jordan, obviously LeBron's bigger and he's better, but he's got that rebounding side of him. He's got that facilitating side of him. He's got the similar height and body frame. Scottie Pippen is a lot like LeBron. Now, Michael still averages 33 a game, 7 boards, 6 assists, 3 steals, shoots 52%. The team wins 55 games, and there's 4 teams above 52 wins in the East this year, counting the Bulls. They get to the conference finals again, and for the 3rd consecutive year, they lose to the bad boys, who end up winning the championship again. Scottie Pippen, the famous migraine game in Game 7. Now, this is also the first year that Scottie Pippen was an all-star. So when one of you guys say, well, he never did shit without Pippen, or he never did anything without Pippen, you have to understand when Pippen became an all-star. And this was this year. And to put things into perspective a little more, nowadays, when a team loses to the same team 3 years in a row, we have a lot of, oh, they should break it up. Oh, they can't get over the hump. Back then, Michael Jordan was never going to say that. It was going to be, how do we get better? How do we come back stronger? How do we get over the hump? Not, oh, man, I don't know if I can win with these guys. This Pistons team is too hard for me to beat. Anyway, let's shift it over. 08-09, the Cavs get someone that really helps LeBron. A star, a potential star. Mo Williams. And this is the first example of LeBron really making a player better with evidence. He was an all-star for the only time in his career. And of course, Mo Williams is a good addition because not only can he score a little bit with the ball, he's not too much of a creator as a point guard. He's more of a spot-up shooter scorer, which works perfectly with LeBron. And they go 66-16, an unbelievable record. LeBron has worse stats than the previous year, but he still averages 28, 8, and 7. And they have the 1 seed. And a lot of LeBron fans try to say that LeBron's the most valuable player wherever he goes, this and that. You see, the most valuable player in the NBA award should really be renamed the player of the season, because the way somebody wins is, what are your expectations before the season? Do you meet those or overachieve? You'll never see someone that finishes worse than they are expected before the season to win MVP. In this case, Kobe Bryant was still the best player in the NBA. If you watch basketball, you know that's a fact. And in this season, it was at the forefront because LeBron's team was finally, record-wise comparable with Kobe, and Kobe literally torched him in both regular season games. You know why I know this? Because I watched him rooting for LeBron and started crying when I realized Kobe was actually better than him at basketball. But because LeBron's young, I just hope one day he would be better than him. Regardless, if you want to talk about who's the most valuable player this year statistically, Dwayne Wade averaged more points, more assists, and shot a better percentage than LeBron and Kobe. And he made the playoffs, and guess who his second best player was? Michael Beasley, a rookie who averaged 14 points. So you know what that tells you? Winning is part of the equation, and that's why LeBron deservedly won MVP. So who do they play in the playoffs? The Pistons, without now Billups and Ben Wallace, they sweep them pretty easily. And they play against the Atlanta Hawks with Joe Johnson and Josh Smith. beat them easily, sweep both teams, and then they go and play against the Orlando Magic in the conference finals. LeBron still has amazing stats. He increases his averages, but they lose in 6. The Magic just seem to have too many weapons for him. LeBron's the best player in the series. He had that big game winner in game 2. But if he had missed that shot, they would have gone down 2-0 in the series. So once again, we're not going to fault LeBron because he's doing all he can. So now we go to year 7. Michael Jordan now, 61 wins. MVP for the second time. Scottie Pippen actually wasn't an all-star. But am I going to sit in front of you here and tell you that the Bulls won a championship without a real all-star because Scottie Pippen didn't make it in 91 because he had one of the biggest snubs in NBA history? No, because I'm going to be fair to LeBron as well. That's an all-star, Scottie Pippen. Jordan averages 31, 6, and 6 on 54% shooting. They go into the playoffs. They beat the brakes off the Pistons 4-0, as we all know. And then that takes us to one of the big points that LeBron fans love to make. Well, Jordan had played against not any great teams in the finals. Let's start with number 1. The Los Angeles Lakers. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar may have been gone. But everyone has this opinion because 1 year later he stopped playing because of HIV that Magic Johnson was like old and slow. The Magic Man that's still the best point guard of all time and was second in MVP voting behind Michael? Yeah, that guy. Big game James Worthy, who was still an all-star and basically in his prime? Yeah, that guy. AC Green and Michael Thompson, who were key reserves for the Showtime days, as well as Byron Scott, who was still averaging 15, not the 22 points a game he averaged in 88 for those that don't know. And, of course, the sharp-shooting 4, Sam Perkins, who came off the... Actually, he may have started. I don't know if he came off the bench or not. That is also going to be mentioned later on the 96 Sonics. But nobody knows who those guys are. And I'm not even talking about Vlade Divac, who everyone knows better now as a bad exec for the Kings, or the guy who tipped the ball out to Robert Horry, or the guy that was traded for Kobe, who was actually a second-year center replacing the best ever and helping Magic get to the finals. So he was also an all-star at one point of his career, too. But that team was easy to beat for sure. You know, the Bulls had never been to the finals, and the Lakers had been a bunch of times, but it was an easy win for the Bulls. I watched Game 3. They didn't talk about this in The Last Dance. They just talked about it as the Paxson game. If you watch the second half of the game, in the third quarter, Magic Johnson is literally running the show like he's the best player on planet fucking Earth. And then guess what happens? With like 20 seconds, 10 seconds left in the game, Pippen gets fouled out and the Lakers go up by 2. What does MJ do? I can't believe they didn't show this in The Last Dance either. Comes up the length of the floor, pulls up for a jumper contested, and hits it. Ties the game, and they win in overtime. Big plays, baby. And they go on to win 4-1, and now the kicker. Michael Jordan's final stats. 31 points, 7 rebounds, and wait for it, 11 assists. But Michael Jordan can't pass, right? Like LeBron. LeBron's never averaged 11 assists in the finals that he's won ever. But yeah, not to mention he averaged 56% from the field and 50% from 3. But here's the thing. I said before, I'm not going to mention 3-pointers because guess how many he shot? Only 4. So it's misleading and it's irrelevant. But that whole run, 15-2 playoff record, the Bulls get their first championship. Now let's shift over to LeBron's 7th year. They replace Ben Wallace with an old Shaquille O'Neal and get Candace Parker's brother, Anthony. Another spot-up shooter. And then they get a trade to get Antoine Jamison, who was averaging 20.5 points a game with Washington that same exact season. But when he came to the Cavs, he dropped his scoring average by 4. But LeBron makes everyone better, right? Well, once again, I know, sacrifice. LeBron has an unbelievable season, 30 points, 7 boards, 8 assists, 50% shooting, which is his first time shooting 50% or more, and won MVP deservedly so again. In the first round, they played against Derrick Rose in his sophomore year and beat him 4-1. And then he played against an extremely difficult... I'm like blanking on this one, actually. Whatever. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is the round that they lost. They're playing the Celtics. My bad. They're playing the Celtics. And let's just look at these stats. Of course, LeBron was outmatched, but I actually got to watch Game 5 because during quarantine, they were showing it on NBA TV, and I noticed things I didn't notice before. Listen to these stats. Game 1, LeBron has 35. They win. Mind you, the Cavs had home court advantage for this series. Game 2, he had 24. They lost. Game 3, 38. They win. Game 4, 22. They lose. So it's almost as if when LeBron scores 30 or more, they win, and when he doesn't, they lose. But LeBron's a pass-first guy. He's a pass-first guy. Okay, what the fuck does that mean, though? Because he still averages the most points wherever he goes. A pass-first guy is like a Magic Johnson. But Larry Bird is the best comparison I can make because he's a pass-first guy. But when it came down to the end of the game, we knew where the ball was going. Larry Legend. LeBron? Well, I guess I don't know. And now the kicker. Game 5 in Cleveland. You basically have to win this game because if you don't, Boston's going to finish you. And what does LeBron put up? Because Tony Allen's guarding him, and LeBron's not good enough to do anything against Tony Allen because all they're doing is backing off 5 feet away from him and forcing him to get rid of the ball to these other spot-up shooters who are literally only spot-up shooters because LeBron wants to control everything. 15 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 turnovers, 3 of 14 from the field, 21% shooting. Are you fucking serious? That's what you do? That's how you play your last game for Cleveland? You know, when you want to make excuses that someone's playing against a super team, you have to tell me that they did everything they could. Like when Michael Jordan played against the 86 Celtics, like we just talked about, he averaged 44 points and lost. Not that ridiculousness. He obviously averaged less than 30 in the playoffs and shot under 40%. But of course, 7 years have gone by and LeBron really hasn't had a real all-star. And now we go to year 8. And one thing you'll notice a trend for most players is once you win a championship, your confidence just grows. And that was the case in 92 when the Bulls won 67 games. Jordan won his 3rd MVP and another scoring title with the classic 36-6 average. There were 4 51-plus win teams in the East again, including the Knicks, who they met in the second round, who have obviously gotten a little better and some continuity from the last time they played. And took them 7 games, but the Bulls just edged them out. And then, of course, they played the Cavs in the conference finals, who had 3 All-Stars on the year. Mark Price, Brad Daugherty, and Larry Nance. But no one wants to talk about the Cavs because they never won a championship. Because you know why? Because when you don't win a championship, it's fucking irrelevant 20 years later, seemingly, to the casual fan. And then, now we go to number 2 of how many teams Jordan played in the playoffs that weren't very good. The Portland Trailblazers. Now, to put into perspective, 3 years consecutively, the Blazers won 57-plus games, including the finals, which they lost in 90 to the Bad Boys, and then the previous year, 91, they lost in the conference finals to the team that the Bulls beat, the Lakers. Now they're back again. And of course, we all know about the second-best shooting guard in the league at the time, Clyde Drexler, so I don't even have to talk about him. But then there's Terry Porter, someone that nobody talks about. And this is one of the most underrated players to ever play basketball. A 2-time All-Star on either side of this year, and he averaged 18 points a game. But why wasn't he an All-Star this year, you might ask? You know the 3 point guards that made it to the All-Star team over him? John Stockton, Tim Hardaway Sr., and a special guest, Magic Johnson, who was invited after he retired from HIV. That's why Terry Porter didn't make the All-Star team. And you know who else didn't make it? Kevin Johnson, who we're going to talk about later, who averaged 20 and 10 this season on a 52-win team. But no one wants to talk about Terry Porter. But wait, I'm not done. How about the 2-time All-Star Kevin Duckworth? He couldn't make the All-Star team because they had David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Dikembe Mutombo. How about a 3-time All-Star, Buck Williams, who in each of his first 7 years in the league averaged 15 and 10 at least. And he sacrificed to play with this Blazers team and averaged 11 and 9 and brought that toughness. But nobody wants to talk about him because they don't know about him. And then Jerome Kersey, the late great Jerome Kersey, one of the great role players who all of them speak highly of. And then, of course, the 2 bench players that everyone likes. Danny Ainge, who's back in the mix, and then Cliff Robinson, who, if you watch Survivor, you'll remember him from season 28. Cliff Robinson was a 6th man of the year the following year after this, and an all-star the year after that. So right here, he's starting to burst onto the scene. That's who Jordan played in the finals. That trash team, or not very good, that he beat in 6. You know why? Because Jordan outperformed everyone, including Drexler. And that's his 2nd ring. And now we go to the year that changed basketball forever, the offseason of 2010. So the Cavs, not just LeBron, because everyone wants to say, the Cavs plummeted after LeBron, obviously. They also lost Shaq, they also lost Big Z, and Delonte. But most importantly, they lost the nucleus of everything, LeBron. LeBron had a decision to make. There was another route he could have went that may have ended up better for his reputation and had better implications on his career of winning rings long term, but I'll bring that up later. But everyone knows what he did. He chose to go to Miami and play with his friends. He asked them, let's play together, thus starting something, a culture that has changed the game forever. And it's not like we haven't had super teams before. That's where people get this shit twisted. The Celtics I was just talking about were a super team. But it's not just choosing where you go. It's choosing who he's playing with. And of course, before, LeBron was the hero. And after doing this, he became the villain that was booed in every arena and started to become the most scrutinized athlete maybe in the history of America. And that is because he did a 1-hour television special of his decision, basically rubbing salt in the Cavs fans' wounds. And they're waiting. I mean, imagine being a Cavs fan waiting all night, going to the bar. Let's see when LeBron re-signs with us. And he bails, and you're left with nothing. I mean, that's just really hard to hear. And I know LeBron regrets this, and this is one of the things he regrets. And one of the things that even when I was a LeBron fan, I said he did wrong. But to make it even worse, in a press conference before he even plays a game with Miami, he goes, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 6, not 7 championship rings that they're going to win together. I know it's a joke, but everyone in the league is watching that like, oh, you talking a lot now, guy. Well, guess what happened? Just 17 games into the season, the Heat were 9-8. And when everybody likes to say another counter argument, well, LeBron never played for a good coach. Well, he came and played for Eric Spoelstra. And 9 years have gone by, people. I think we know how good of a coach Eric Spoelstra is by now. But at the time, he'd never done shit in terms of winning. So LeBron, and this is directly from the New York Daily News, here's a quote. There is a report that Miami Heat players are frustrated with their coach and question whether he's the right man for the star-studded team. And now, in 2018, Pat Riley came out and said LeBron wanted Spoelstra gone and for Pat Riley to take over just like he did in 06, thus giving LeBron the coach killer phrase attached to his name. And there's a clip, once again, I'm going to post in the sources, of LeBron literally bumping his shoulder into Eric Spoelstra when he calls a timeout. I mean, you're a player and you're bumping your new coach, dude. Okay. And then the ultimate, the Cavs, and you know what I love about this is for once, and so far in his career, the Miami Heat are a world-class organization. Pat Riley didn't let LeBron step over him and just do what he wanted. He said, you know what? No, Eric's our guy. I'm not moving anywhere. You better learn how to play with him, and that's that. And guess what happened? He did. And the Heat won 58 games. But a lot of LeBron fans say that D Rose shouldn't have won MVP. Once again, the Bulls had a better record. They went from the 8 seed to the 1 seed with just one addition, Carlos Boozer. D Rose won MVP averaging 25 points as a third-year player. And Carlos Boozer, here's the kicker, guys. Carlos Boozer missed 23 games. Joakim Noah missed 34. And you're still telling me that when the Bulls had a better record that LeBron should have won MVP. That's hypocritical because if you want to say the numbers are better, then D Wade should have won MVP in 09. So take that for some data, as David Fizdale would say. But we all know the deal. The best player performs in the playoffs. And in the first round, the Heat play the very tough Andre Iguodala and young Lou Williams in the first round. Beat them in 5. And then they play against the Celtics. Now, the Celtics have changed a little bit from the previous year because Kendrick Perkins, who was a big piece of their team, and a lot of Celtics fans go on record saying that if they had Perkins in Game 7 of the finals the previous year, they would have won. They trade Perkins for Jeff Green, but Jeff Green has heart problems, so he can't play those first 2 years. So basically, the Celtics traded Perkins for honestly nothing, and LeBron beats them 4-1. LeBron and Wade, who are the best 2 players in the series, they beat him 4-1. But the main thing I noticed about LeBron was in Game 4 and 5, he closed the game like I really had never seen before. He had this look in his eye, and he carried that over when he played the MVP in the next round. He closed out multiple games. I was like, this is it, guys. He finally got his good team. He's finally going to show everyone he's determined to win. I mean, he was being clutch. Go pull up that footage. But then something unprecedented happened. The worst finals performance of any star in the history of the NBA Finals. Let's just take it to Game 2, where the Heat had a 1-0 lead in the series. They blow an 18-point lead. Dwayne Wade scores 36 points. LeBron James scores 20, only has 4 assists, and turns the ball over 5 times. They bounce back and win in Game 3, and then in Game 4, we have what a lot of people say is the reason he shouldn't even be compared to Jordan. Like, that's it. Like, the argument's over. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and continue. But in Game 4, he scored 8 points. Not in one quarter, in the whole fucking game. 8 points. 0 of 1 in the fourth with a turnover. But guess what Dwayne Wade had in the fourth? 7 points on 3 of 5 shooting, and the Heat only lost by 3. 18, 7, and 7 in the entire series. LeBron was a joke. And you know what that tells me? He was still bigger and stronger. He was still more of an all-around player than Kobe. But what does that mean when he doesn't get over the hump? There is a stat, my friends, or a variable that is not measured in stats and you can only see by watching the game, and that is confidence. It is something that carries over in life, with anything that you do, and if you've played sports, you know it's everything. And Michael Jordan mastered the confidence game, something that LeBron has lacked throughout his career. There's levels to this shit. He obviously has more confidence than a lot of players in the league, but when you compare him to guys like Jordan, to Larry, to Kobe, that is abysmal. A disgrace. And you know what's funny is nobody was putting LeBron in any top conversation when this happened. Do you know why? Because he has to win. That is the name of the game. So that's pathetic. So this more with less argument is completely over now, because if you're saying that he did more with less, that's implying that when he gets more, he can win it because he's got the better team with the better players. Well, he did, and he lost because he could not break through a 2-3 zone because he had no fucking jumper, unlike Jordan. And you know what you're going to say? Oh, but there was no zones when Jordan played. You're a product of your environment. There's a reason why everyone's starting to shoot more threes now, 19 years after zone and hand checking and the freedom of movement, and the league wanted to free up the game and make it a more aesthetically pleasing experience by making it more offensive minded than that gritty, slow, half-court pack the paint that they had in the 90s, which tells you a little bit more about how hard it is to score if you're Jordan. And obviously, if you think that Michael Jordan wouldn't adjust his style if there was more three-shot, then you're insulting his work ethic. Anyway, so LeBron sucked there. So now let's go to the 9th year, 93, a three-peat. We've never seen it in my 15 years watching basketball. We've never seen a three-peat. The last time it happened was the Lakers. The Heat were close, but we're going to get into that. But every single year, all these players say when you want to repeat, it gets harder every year. The Bulls finished with a worse record than they did the previous year, 57-25. Mike still does his shit, 32-7-6, 3 steals, 50%. They play against the Cavs again with their 3 All-Stars again on the same year. They beat them. And then we have the 93 series where Jordan got in the whole gambling thing when they were down 2-0 in the conference finals against the Knicks. And they come back and beat them because Jordan goes crazy. And then we're at team number 3, the Phoenix Suns, who had a better record than the Bulls, but that's just not even it. Because everyone just thinks they played Charles Barkley and that's it. I'm wearing his jersey right now just for the fuck of it, but one of the best power forwards in the league, right? Now, the 92 Suns had 53 wins and were a second-round team even before Barkley. And you know what they did is they swapped their top scorer, Jeff Hornacek, for Charles Barkley, which is a big upgrade, I guess, in my opinion. I mean, Hornacek's a great player, but this is Barkley we're talking about. And he also had Thunder Dan, who, let me tell you about Dan Marley now, because no one knows about him. And in The Last Dance, they painted him out to be some average white guy. This was an all-defensive team guy. He could shoot the 3 in his time. He could get buckets on basically all levels. And he could dunk. He had bounce for a white dude. And then, of course, there's Kevin Johnson, who didn't make the All-Star team because he missed 30-plus games. And also, even if he were to make the All-Star team, or were to play all those games, look who he has to make it over. John Stockton, Tim Hardaway Sr., and guess who made it this year? Terry Porter. Look how it all comes back, right? Kevin Johnson, who, for a lot of people that don't know, 2 years later in Game 7 against Houston that they lost, but no one talks about it because once again they lost, he had 46 points and 10 assists. Do you know how ridiculous that is in a Game 7 in that era? And Charles Barkley let him down a bit. 18 points, 23 rebounds, and 5 assists. Those stats still sound nice, but once again, I watched the game. Charles Barkley didn't do what it needed to win. But let's go back to 93. So KJ, Dan Marley, Charles Barkley, who won MVP, 3 All-Stars. But let's get to the bench, because guess who just moved to another championship contending team? Danny Ainge. 2 straight teams that made the finals, and he's on both of them. Coincidence? Oh, I don't know. And then we have Tom Chambers, who was just an All-Star 2 years prior, a 4-time All-Star, and was a reserve at this point, who still had that experience. And then we had Cedric Ceballos, who averaged 13 points off the bench, 2 years away from averaging 21 a game and dropping 50 in an NBA game for a playoff Lakers team known as the Lake Show. But nobody wants to talk about those guys because they don't fucking know any better. But Michael Jordan had a really easy route to win the finals, right? In the finals, he took his game to the next level to have to get through this team. 41 points, 8 rebounds, 8.5 actually, 6 assists. That's called pushing yourself to the limit right there. That's called a different level of willing to win. And now we get to LeBron 2011-12, the lockout season. Now, before the season, LeBron states that he didn't want to be the villain. This goes back to the whole nice guy thing. LeBron likes being loved. He wants to be loved. This is a quote straight from LeBron. I play the game fun, joyful, and I let my game do all the talking, and I got away from that. That's what I lost last year. Going through my first 7 years in the NBA, I was always the liked one. And to be on the other side, they call it the dark side or the villain or whatever they call it. It was definitely challenging for myself. It was a situation I had never been in before, and it took a while. It took a long time to adjust to it. He worked with Akeem on his post game, and he came out in that Christmas game against Dallas, the season opener, with a vengeance. But of course, we saw that vengeance stuff in the conference finals, so we wouldn't really believe it until we saw the whole thing. LeBron wins his third MVP, deservedly so. A fantastic stat line of 27, 8, and 6, 53% shooting. And listen to his team, though. Mario Chalmers, Shane Battier, Mike Miller, James Jones. What do these guys all have in common? 3-point shooting, spot-up shooters, 3-and-D guys. There's a reason why this team was constructed a certain way. And in Miami, one thing I loved about LeBron is when people say LeBron can't play off the ball, as a LeBron fan, I would always refer to his years in Miami, where there was a lot of down screens, a lot of him not having the ball, a lot of him, coming down and getting a layup on the block from someone else, because D. Wade, Chalmers, there was people that they could pay attention to, that he didn't have in Cleveland. And I think that was the best for him because he was actually in a real system with a real coach. And of all the teams LeBron's played for, you never hear the phrase, oh, they're well coached. Oh, they're a great team. Oh, they play so well together. They move the ball well. But you did when he was with Miami because he was a well-coached team. LeBron goes on to play a solid Knicks team in the first round, beats them in 5. Then they go to the second round and play against the Pacers, whose best player was literally like Danny Granger or Roy Hibbert. And Bosh gets injured. That's why the series goes 6. And the Celtics team they played in the conference finals. Now, let's not overrate the Celtics team. This Celtics team was still good. Rondo was kind of their best player, but they had no one averaging over 20 points. D. Wade and LeBron are like 2 top 5 players in the league at this point. And because Bosh isn't playing for most of the games, the Celtics still are up 3-2 going into game 6. And that's when LeBron had the moment where he became a winner. Or at least not relative to Jordan, but a winner. 45 points, a look in his eye that's become a famous picture today. He really looked like he just was not going to take no for an answer. And that's the same thing he showed in game 5 against Detroit 5 years earlier. He gets to the finals, he plays a young OKC team, and they win. Even though they didn't have home court advantage, they win. But were the Thunder really favored to win that series? Of course not. And when people like to say, and LeBron, by the way, 28, 10, and 7, increased his average in the finals, won finals MVP as he so deserved. James Harden averaged 17 points back then. He wasn't the James Harden of now. There were 2 All-Stars on the team that season. But we're going to still count James Harden as an All-Star caliber player because we're doing the same thing with Jordan's opposition. So, yes, it was a good team, but this is not the James Harden of today that's dropping 30. So now Jordan takes a break and retires from baseball, which gives LeBron a little chance to catch up. And this is where a lot of people say, look what Scottie Pippen did without Michael Jordan. Well, there's also some things you're forgetting. Tony Kukoc was added to the team this year. Steve Kerr was added to the team this year. Bill Wennington was added to the team this year. The Bulls, Scottie Pippen is a great leader. He gets everyone involved, as you saw in The Last Dance. But they played that Knicks team in the second round, and they couldn't beat them without Mike. And that Knicks team finally got their lucky break. They get to the finals and are one game away from winning the whole damn thing. They lose game 7 in Houston. And that tells you, though, how close that Knicks team was to winning a championship when Michael Jordan was not in the league. So, now we go to LeBron. He comes off winning the ring, maybe like 92 Jordan style, and it was. 27 wins in a row, 66-16, an amazing season for LeBron, arguably his best ever, shooting an insane 56% with the normal stats, and then he obviously goes to the playoffs. They beat a grueling Brandon Jennings and Monte Ellis in the first round. And then they play another great tough series against the all-time Joakim Noah and Luol Deng. And then they get to the conference finals and play Paul George, who's the best player, that averaged 18 points a game. And they are pushed to the brink to the 7th game. Now, am I saying that Indiana team wasn't good? Of course not. They were solid. But look what we're comparing them to. But everybody acts like that Indiana team was good because you watched them play, you fucking morons. Anyway, LeBron gets to the finals and plays San Antonio, and we all know what happens next. LeBron was not great in the games they lost, but ultimately Ray Allen was able to hit a big 3. Now, I'm not just going to say Ray Allen bailed out LeBron, because who made that comeback? LeBron. When his headman got knocked off, he went different mode. And in Game 7, he was fantastic and hit a huge shot in Game 7 to put him up 4, and that was when LeBron was kind of at his peak here. Seems like his career is going perfectly. 2 rings in a row, now he's starting to close the gap. In 1995, the Bulls obviously struggled without Mike, as you saw in The Last Dance, because they lost Horace Grant. So Scottie is even struggling to make the playoffs without Jordan. For all you guys that say, what is he doing without Jordan? Or look at how he's doing without Jordan. Without Horace Grant, that team takes a big dip. And then, of course, Mike comes back. And we're not going to excuse that he lost to Orlando. He lost. He also lost with a fight. He also didn't play a full season. But he lost. And now we go to 2013-14 Bron. It's time for a three-peat. It's time to put your name with the greats. Classic LeBron stat line, 27, 7, and 6. And I think as a LeBron fan, what I noticed this year is this is when he started his whole, I'm going to take it a little bit easy in the regular season, and then in the playoffs, I'm really going to save myself for playoff Bron. Well, let's talk about the first round matchup against the incredibly hard Charlotte Bobcats. Sweep. And then the second round against the tough, the terrible, I don't even fucking remember at this point. I don't even know who they played. Probably, it was the Nets. Oh, the Nets with 80-year-old Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Darren Williams that they beat in 5. And then they go to the conference finals and play against the Indiana Pacers again, who they beat pretty handedly in 6 games now that they have Bosh back for the whole thing. So now they get their rematch against San Antonio. And this is one of the biggest parts of my argument, guys. As a LeBron fan, you look at the stats, you see that LeBron averaged 28 and 7 on 55% shooting, and you think he had a good series and no one else helped him. That's how I looked at it back in the day. But that's because I was LeBron's fan. I didn't see it without that lens. Let's talk for a second. In the first 2 games, LeBron played great. They come out of the series 1-1, and they do exactly what they need to do. They get home court advantage going back to Miami. In Game 3, LeBron starts the first quarter in attack mode. 14 points, right? For the rest of the game, he only scored 7 points. And I'm telling you right now, they came out with no intensity on defense at all. But they went down by 20, right? And in the third quarter, they make a run with LeBron on the bench, with D Wade and Bosh in the game. And this is reflective, and I'm not a big plus-minus guy, but it reflects my argument here because I saw this game just now, like a couple weeks ago. LeBron, minus 21 plus-minus, the worst on his entire team. Dwayne Wade was the only player that played 30 minutes or more in that game and was under minus 10 because they made the run when LeBron was out of the game. So the fourth quarter starts, and the Heat are down by 10. The crowd's going crazy. Ray Allen started to hit some threes. They got 7 Nation Army banging at the AAA. What does LeBron do in the fourth quarter when it's time for the best player that's just come off the bench to take over? 2 turnovers and a missed shot. But his stat line looks good because he's 9 of 14 with 22 points. And you all want to blame his supporting cast. If his supporting cast is so shitty, you got to drop 30, especially when the Spurs are that good. But no, we're going to make excuses for him more. Game 4, LeBron comes out once again. That was different. No sense of urgency from the whole team in a 2-1 situation where if you lose this game, you're pretty much done. And I'm going to say D-Wade played like shit. Chris Bosh played like pretty much shit. LeBron didn't play no better, though, and he's the best player in the NBA. 9 points at halftime. He played well in the second half. He had a good third quarter, but at that point, like, it's solid, but, like, you know, you got to start out with a little more intensity here. You're losing. So now we go to Game 5, and he played pretty solid, but that's what I'm talking about. You see, guys, 32 points is not the same as 32 points. When you score 4 points in garbage time when you're down 20 already, it means nothing, as opposed to when you score 4 with the game on the line. LeBron, he loves to have his stats, like he loves to keep his efficiency. He loves to, dribble and waste time off the shot clock and wait. Like, something I noticed about LeBron is a lot of times he doesn't keep the defense honest at all. He kind of just dribbles in place and waits for everyone to load up on him because he gets so much attention as it is and passes to his shooters for late contested threes by the defense, which is, if you're the Spurs, exactly what you want him to do is give up the ball. But it's before he even makes his move, which he does so many times, hunting for assists. Michael Jordan, on the other hand, keeps the defense honest by trying to attack. So when you guys say LeBron was not at fault for 2014, that's a load of bullshit. I watched the series. That's not what the best player does. That's not what Michael Jordan did, because Michael Jordan pushed himself to great lengths to get over the finish line, something LeBron does not do. And if you listen to the commentators, Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, they say it in the series as well. But now, the biggest thing, how do they respond to defeat? Well, Michael Jordan responded with 82 games played, 72-10, the best record of all time. Of course, they get Dennis Rodman, let's not forget. The classic 35-5 stat line, another MVP. And of course, the Eastern Conference again has 7 teams over 46 wins. He plays Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway. He plays the Knicks again. And then, of course, the rematch against the Magic. And he sweeps them. Now, I'm going to be fair. Horace Grant missed every game after Game 1. But even with Horace Grant playing in Game 1, they lost by 30. And had he played, maybe they could have gotten a game. But Mike was on a mission. And that brings us to another point about this team. Everyone says his team was loaded with stars. Well, Dennis Rodman wasn't an all-star any of the years he played on this Bulls team, was he? But Rodman, we all know, has an all-star impact. So if you want to say I'm not being fair to LeBron, oh, trust me, I'm being fair. Because if I didn't want to, I could say that he only won with Pippen as an all-star. He was the only all-star, but that's a load of horseshit. 72-10. Let's talk about the Sonics, who struggled for so many years to get to the finals because their conference was so competitive. Notice every single team that Jordan played in the finals, he only played one time besides Utah because there was so much parity and so many stars because the league was so spread out. Very similarly to what we have in today's present NBA, where it's like 2 stars on each team or something like that. Not this loaded bullshit. Anyway, the Sonics win 64 games. Gary Payton is the Defensive Player of the Year. He's the only point guard to ever do it. Sean Kemp, we don't even need to talk about because he's a multi-time All-Star. But let's talk about the other guys. Detlef Schrempf, who was a Sixth Man of the Year twice, was an All-Star 3 times on either side of this year. And then Hersey Hawkins, who was an All-Star 1 time. He averaged 20-plus for 2 years and was still averaging 15 in 96. Not to mention they still had Sam Perkins from that 91 Lakers team. But he didn't play anyone in the finals. And then we saw that famous shot of him crying on the floor after, because that's how miserable he made himself. He doesn't want to make himself comfortable like LeBron. He wants to make himself miserable to win. And that separates them. And you know what? I'm going to not lie to you again. His final stats dropped here, Jordan. But do you know why it's irrelevant? Because he fucking won. Now, 2014-15. Now, you see, guys, LeBron, he's already lost this debate, but he doesn't know it yet. He doesn't know what's going to happen in a couple years, but he's already fucked up, and he doesn't even know it. LeBron has a big decision here. Now, when I was a LeBron fan, I really loved this Heat team. I loved rooting for Dwayne Wade. Even though he's, declining, so is Bosh to an extent. Not really, though. I wanted LeBron to stay because this is the best chance for him to win. But then, all of a sudden, LeBron chooses to go back to Cleveland. And this is when I say you have to look at it from not fucking revisionist history hindsight. You have to look at it right at the moment. When LeBron went to Cleveland, I was actually just happy because the potential of him winning a championship in Cleveland, but I was really concerned that he was taking too big of a risk to go with a Kyrie Irving who had never, ever been to the playoffs yet, as opposed to Dwayne Wade. I don't care if he's declining. He's still Dwayne fucking Wade and Chris Bosh. And the San Antonio Spurs lost in the first round the following year to the Clippers. The Warriors, a young Warriors team, would have been the Heat's opposition had he stayed. So when you guys say he wouldn't have won any more championships than Miami, I don't know about that, because the East was still trash to the point where he could still get there no matter what team he went to. And let's put it, and when you guys say LeBron's never played for a good organization, he had it on the Heat. If he wanted to win long term, if winning was his number one priority above everything else, he would have stayed in Miami, because Miami's a big market with a great organization that can give him great players with a great coach. Cleveland? Let's listen to an article by Slate released right at this time. The only time the Cavs were good in recent memory was when James was in town, and the only reason they got him was that they happened to be terrible in a year when LeBron went number 1 in the draft. This is a team that has done little right except be located in the same state where the best player of his generation was born, which shows you how shitty of an organization they were. But LeBron wants to go there. You realize that LeBron doing this is a risk, because if even one of the players leaves, it's going to be really hard to get another star in Cleveland. And I'm surprised he even got Kevin Love to come over. And the reason that was because Kevin Love was already in Minnesota. I know it was the trade for Andrew Wiggins, but he was already in Minnesota, so it doesn't really get much worse than that, really. I mean, I'd rather play with LeBron than people in Minnesota. Now, in LeBron's Sports Illustrated welcoming him back to Cleveland letter, he mentioned Dion Waiters and Tristan Thompson and Kyrie Irving, but he never mentioned Andrew Wiggins. I wonder why. Because he knew what was going on. He knew that he had a hand in getting Kevin Love to Cleveland. But because you guys want to say that the Heat were so bad immediately after, let me spit some facts at you. Wade still averaged 21 points the next year. Bosh still averaged 21 points the next year before the blood clots, which caused him to miss 38 games. But LeBron didn't know he was going to get blood clots. So in hindsight, it looks like LeBron made the right decision. But even with, you know what's funny is that even without Bosh, I still think they had a chance to beat that weak East. Because the number 1 seed that year was the Atlanta Hawks with Paul Millsap, Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, and Al Horford. Are you kidding me, guys? Comparing that to what Jordan had to play? So, Wade missed 20 games. He actually missed more games in 2014, which is hilarious. And they didn't make the playoffs because of that. But Mario Chalmers averaged a career high. I wonder why. And then they picked up Hassan Whiteside off of waivers. And one of the big problems for the Heat the entire time LeBron was there is they had no inside presence, no real rim protection. Hassan Whiteside would have been picked off waivers the same way to run a little pick and roll action with Bron. That could have been an enticing scenario, right? But LeBron wanted to go take a risk with young Kyrie Irving. And somehow they still made it to the finals because he played against, the only real test he had was against the Chicago team whose best player was Jimmy Butler. They still had, Joakim and D Rose who had come off his injuries at this point. And they beat him in 6. That was a big shot LeBron hit. I think game 4, big shot. And one thing you'll notice about LeBron is people want to say that he's not clutch. And what you'll respond to that is showing him all the playoff game winners he's made, including his percentage in shots under 5 seconds that he's better than at Jordan. He has a higher percentage than Jordan and Kobe. Well, let me break it to you fucking fools. Just because the last shot of the game is not all that clutch is. It's how you take over the game in the last couple minutes. Have you noticed most of the game winners LeBron has had in the playoffs are when they inbound the ball with either 3 seconds or left, the layup against Indiana, the jumper in the corner against Chicago, the shot against Orlando. Why? Because they're plays that the coach draws up for him because there's not that much pressure to think about anything. You just got to shoot it. If you make it, you make it, and if you miss it, you miss. And LeBron is a very good, field goal percentage. He's got a good chance to make shots when he takes them. When he fucks up is when he has a decision and it's a live ball, open play scenario. So, nonetheless, they make it back to the finals. Kyrie gets hurt, Kevin Love gets hurt, and they lose to the Warriors. Would they have won if LeBron had played? I think so. But, he just got unlucky. He averaged unbelievable stats in the finals, 36, 13, and 8 on 40%. And if you're wondering, oh, by the way, Kyrie Irving is also another player alongside Mo Williams that I think LeBron helped in his career. He started averaging more points, and he really taught him how to win. Kevin Love, on the other hand, his average went from 26 to 16, and he became a spot up shooter. Once again, LeBron James putting people in boxes because now he's back in Cleveland and can control everything, which he likes to do. Anyway, by the way, just so we're being clear here, the first round team he played was a sub 500 team, the Boston Celtics, who had no business making the playoffs, and their starting lineup was Marcus Smart in his sophomore year, in his rookie year, Avery Bradley, Evan Turner, Jared Sullinger, and Tyler Zeller. So tell me what you think of that East. Anyway, now we go to 96-97. We're almost done here, guys. Yay! Michael Jordan, 69 wins, 13 losses. The classic averages, 48% from the field. Six Eastern Conference teams with 54 plus wins. 6 of them. 44 just to make the playoffs. That is called Western Conference right now. He had to play C. Webb in the first round, beat the brakes off him. And then a team with multiple All-Stars. Christian Laettner, actually an All-Star this year. Dikembe Mutombo, Defensive Player of the Year on that very year, and an All-Star. And of course, Steve Smith, probably the most well-known, one of the most well-known of those. Beat them, and then in the conference finals played Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, and beat them. And then, of course, beat the Jazz, who had only Karl Malone and Stockton. No. They also had Jeff Hornacek, who we mentioned earlier in 1992, averaged 20 points a game on 51, 44, and 89. He was almost 50, 40, 90, people. But, he's not that good because, Michael didn't really play anyone. And of course, Jordan hits a game winner in game 1, a finals buzzer beater, something LeBron has never done, and goes on to win the series in 6 after Steve Kerr makes his big shot. And now we get to 2015-16. This is when LeBron kept going with his coach killer stuff. Now let me read you a quote. When James turned his attention to free agency after losing in the finals with the Miami Heat, James' representatives were surprised the Cavs had hired Blatt and hadn't waited to see if James would have input. Le GM. Within days of the start of the past season, James began expressing doubt that Blatt would work out as the Cavs' long-term answer. That was crystallized during a road trip to the West Coast in the second week of the season when James and Irving began a bit of a tug-of-war over control of the offense. Blatt seemed powerless to control them, and if he tried, it didn't work. Shortly thereafter, James changed his role in the Cavs' offense and began playing point guard while moving Irving off the ball. In conjunction with the move, the Cavs naturally started moving away from the Princeton sets Blatt had installed during the preseason. James nonchalantly told the media he didn't consult Blatt on the changes. No, I can do it on my own. I'm past those days where I have to ask. So LeBron can just run. He wants to control every single aspect of the team from on the court to off. He doesn't want more help of people that can handle the ball. He just needs one guy like Wade or Irving and everyone else spot-up shooters. That's what he likes. And then This is what they were saying about LeBron trying to get Tyronn Lue to take over. It was like an 800-pound gorilla as the season moved on, one person involved with the team said. You could just see LeBron connecting to Lue and turning his back on David. And guess what? They added 2 more spot-up shooters, James Jones and Channing Frye. I wonder why. LeBron, 25-7-7, back up to 52%, waits for the playoffs to go playoff mode again. The East got a bit better. You actually had to get 44 wins to make it, but there were only 2 teams above 50 wins, which is a fucking joke. Anyway, and D-Wade, just so we keep talking about D-Wade because everybody acts like he was done after LeBron left, this year, D-Wade took over in the playoffs and took his team to the 7th game of the second round, 1 game away from playing against LeBron, without Bosh. So that's how good D-Wade still was. So, of course, we get to the 2016 finals, which has been milked more than a fucking cow, and I'm going to explain why. Everyone only remembers what happened after LeBron went down 3-1. Let's talk about what happened before, because as a LeBron fan, they lost 4-2 with Matthew Dellavedova and Tristan Thompson and Mozgov as their supporting cast. Now that they have Kyrie and Kevin Love back, they should really beat the Warriors, right? Wrong. The Warriors, who like the Spurs, move the ball and never stick with anyone, beat the brakes off of them in the first 2 games, beating them by 15 in the first game. And LeBron's stat line, 23 points, 12 boards, 9 assists, 9 of 21 at 4 turnovers. 23 points, That's not going to get it done against a 73-9 team, is it? How about the second game where they lost by 33 points? 33. And he had 19 points and 7 turnovers. And you're telling me, I don't care what he won. You're telling me this is the best final series an individual's ever had? And then they go down 3-1. And then what happens? Draymond Green's suspension that an altercation in which LeBron started, but the NBA said that Draymond, it was a repeat offense because he kicked Steven Adams in the nuts in the previous series, so Draymond got penalized, but LeBron didn't. There's also a chance that the NBA did this so that the Cavs would have a better chance to extend their series, thus making more money for the league. Now, I'm not going to go into if schmiffs, but LeBron and Kyrie, you could clearly tell in Game 5 that what the Warriors are missing. And when you say, oh my God, you're going to say Draymond Green is the reason they didn't win, he fucking sucks. Well, that means I just don't need to talk basketball with you, period, because I have a video planned out like in a couple of months about Draymond Green and how he's still so good. And in this series, Draymond Green was the real deal. Because this year he was also an all-star and had Charles Barkley, who has been berating him the last couple of years, on camera when the All-Stars were announced saying that he should have been an All-Star starter. So LeBron and Kyrie each have 41 in Game 5. They do their thing in Game 6 and the momentum is back there. And then in Game 7, they win fair and square. We all know the rest because it's been milked like a fucking cow, obviously. Stephen Curry choked. But Draymond Green, 32 points, 15 rebounds, 9 assists on 11 of 15 shooting. But no, he didn't mean anything when he missed. The reason why I say it doesn't matter, though, because I do think the Warriors would have won 2016, but I also think the Cavs would have won 2015. So it goes both ways. It's 1-1. LeBron got his ring, an unbelievable ring. But what I hate is when people think that just because he came back from 3-1, like there wasn't a little bit of fishiness going on, just a little bit, that this makes him the greatest player ever. Like nobody's ever come back from 3-1. You know what's better than winning in Game 7? Winning in Game 4, sweep. That's what's better. That's showing dominance. Anyway, and this is when I have a big problem. When LeBron came out and said, that right there made me the best player in the world. Not even Michael Jordan has said he's the best player in the world because he respects who came before him. He said it constantly. But LeBron James has the audacity, because that's ridiculous. And now we go to 98, Michael Jordan's last chance at a three-peat, the last dance. You all know what happens next. He plays without Pippen and still wins. For all those that say, what can you do without Pippen? Obviously, it wasn't the playoffs, but he still proved that he can win games. He wins MVP again for the 5th time, gets the number 1 seed, plays a very good sniper Glenn Rice, who was a three-point shooting champ and All-Star Game MVP, averaging 25 in the second round alongside Vlade Divac. Beat them 4-1, as you saw. And then, of course, a very tough Pacers team with Reggie Miller, Mark Jackson, Rick Smits, who was an all-star one time and one of the better centers of his time, but constantly, it's a tough to make the all-star team as a center. It's like being a point guard now back then. But even being a point guard then was tough to make the all-star team. And then there's Dale Davis, who was an all-star just 1 year after this. And then Antonio Davis, who was a double-double machine as well, an all-star 2 years after this. But, Michael Jordan really didn't play anybody to get to the championship or to, in his routes, of course. And, of course, Chris Mullin off the bench. Am I going to call him an all-star? No, because he was only averaging 11. But that guy was on the Dream Team just 6 years before, and he was coming off the bench, so you know what that experience can do. And then, of course, the final championship that Jordan plays, which will bring us to an end of Jordan's career. Now, before you act like the Jazz were trash, they came back this year with an even bigger vengeance. 60-plus wins again. This time, they had home court advantage. And listen to who they beat in the playoffs. You see, Charles Barkley teamed up with Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon in order to win a ring. So when you guys say that no one teamed up to beat LeBron, these people tried to team up to beat Jordan. The only difference was they were way out of their primes, because in their primes, it wasn't in their culture to team up with each other. That wasn't a thing. That's not what Jordan did. He stayed with one team. And you know what he did? So the Jazz beat Hakeem, Chuck, and Drexler, and then 4-1 the 98 Spurs with rookie Tim Duncan and David Robinson, who would go on to win the championship the year after. And guess who they beat in the conference finals? Swept them. The Lakers, who had 4 All-Stars, more talented than the teams that ended up winning the championship. Obviously Shaq, obviously Kobe, Nick Van Exel, and Eddie Jones, who was an all-star 3 consecutive years. But you guys don't know about Eddie Jones, right? The Jazz swept them. And then guess what Michael Jordan did? Beat him again. Because no matter who's in front of him, he beats their ass. Now, am I going to sit here and say that I think Jordan had better finals opponents than LeBron? No. But LeBron's route to get to the finals is pathetic. And at the end of the day, right now, I mean, I understand his career is still going, but he had more chances, and I'm going to get to that now. In 2016-17, so this is when I think LeBron really hit the peak of his career, because what I noticed after he won that 2016 championship was an even greater level of confidence. And once again, I realized the biggest flaw in my argument. Because do you know why I started to think LeBron may have been the GOAT even myself? It's because in 2017 and 18, I saw LeBron take his jumper to the next level. I saw him take his confidence to the next level. I saw him taking every little guy into the post when he got a switch, taking every big guy off the dribble when he got a switch. Really, really putting his foot on the opponent's throat like Jordan did his whole career. But the problem is, one, it wasn't consistent, and two, LeBron had already dug his own grave. Remember when I said LeBron has already lost? Well, here's the thing. Not only is the Cavs management so bad that they re-signed Tristan Thompson and made him the 6th highest paid forward in basketball, they re-signed J.R. Smith, but Kevin Durant chose to ruin the league by going to Golden State. Now, as a LeBron fan, I said it's totally different. LeBron left Cleveland because he had no stars. Kevin Durant had Westbrook. Fair. But in Kevin Durant's mind, he is doing exactly what LeBron did, and that is play with players that he respects and fucks with to win a championship that has eluded him for so long. It doesn't matter what you think is the difference. Kevin Durant saw it the same, and if LeBron had never gone to Miami and teamed up with friends, and not to mention LeBron's just a buddy guy in general. I'm going to mention a big incident later that exemplifies that more than anything. And Michael Jordan is a freakish competitor, unlike LeBron. But for Kevin Durant to do that and fuck LeBron's chances of winning rings, it's almost poetic because LeBron teamed up and Kevin Durant saw him celebrate in front of him in 2012. And to Durant's eyes, there's no difference. So LeBron may have played the most unfair team of all time, but he has himself to blame because you know what option he could have picked that could have prevented all of this? He could have gone to Chicago in 2010. Would his team have been better than Miami? No. But MVP Derrick Rose was just about to happen. Would he have won MVP with LeBron? Of course not. But you're telling me that team couldn't have won the East? Because I think they could have. And that could have changed the league completely. But guess what LeBron gets in 2017? Another spot-up shooter, one of the best of his generation, Kyle Korver. And let me just tell you how trash the East was this year. 53 games was the number 1 seed, and it was the year Isaiah Thomas was in MVP talks. Isaiah Thomas, with all due respect, I love, he's a little guy. Bro's like struggling to get a contract in the league right now. That's the first seed that the Celtics were back then. I mean, are you kidding me? That's the East. LeBron, great stats again, 26, 8, and 9, 55%. And let me just tell you about something that happened this year. Now, you've noticed stats in the NBA have started to get inflated over the last couple of years because of the pace of the game and the amount of threes shot. To give you a statistic that proves this, in 2016, only 6 teams averaged more than 105 points a game. In 2017, half the league averaged over 105 points a game. It's because everyone's trying to copy the Warriors model. Just like in the 90s, the bad boys were the model of defensive physicality, and a lot of teams that came after them were defensive-minded. But LeBron, so another thing everybody talks about is now it's become a whole LeBron-Kawhi thing, and everybody gets on Kawhi for sitting out games. Well, guess who started it? Now, this is on November 16th of the 2016-17 season, right after LeBron came back from 3-1. It's an article from Yahoo. After his heroic effort last night in the Cavaliers win against the Raptors, LeBron James will not go back-to-back tonight when the Cavs suit up against Indiana Pacers due to rest. But Kawhi is the one that started load management, right? You idiots. Stop making excuses. And then, this is when I saw LeBron do something so uncharacteristic because LeBron was always someone that talked very highly of his teammates. And listen to what he said here in a press conference. I don't know what we got to offer, James told reporters Monday night after a pretty inexplicable Cavaliers loss to the Pelicans. I just know me, personally, I don't got no time to waste. I'll be 33 in the winter, and I ain't got no time to waste. That's what I'm talking about. It's like when you don't have bodies, it's tough. The fucking grind of the regular season. We're a top-heavy team. We have a top-heavy team. We top-heavy as shit. It's me, Kyrie, Kevin Love. It's top-heavy. We've got to figure it out. It's been a shitty 2017 so far. We need a fucking playmaker. I'm not saying you can just go find one, like you can go outside and see trees. Are you seriously throwing your teammates under the bus like that in front of the fucking national media? Like, what leader ever does that, dude? Are you kidding me? If you have a problem, go tell the front office you need a backup point guard. That was Darren Williams who they picked up. We need a playmaker on national television, bro? That's your leader? And of course, he breezes through the East like there's no tomorrow, playing against shitty teams like the Raptors and the Celtics, and Isaiah Thomas missed like the whole series too. And then he gets the brakes beat off of him by the Warriors, who are the much better team. But the reason why I say I won't fault LeBron for this individually is because he showed a confidence that was way better than 2016, way better than 2015, and the numbers reflect that. 33, 12, and 10 on 56% shooting. Yes, a 30-point triple-double in the finals. But once again, why is it not as good as Jordan? Because he lost. But look who he played. A product of the fucking philosophy that LeBron has put into the league of teaming up with your friends instead of staying competitive. Do you think that Michael Jordan was like, hey, Patrick Ewing, when they're on the Dream Team together, hey, Pat, you know, we're battling with each other a lot these days. I think if you come over to Chicago, though, we can like go 80-2. No, because he's a fucking competitor, not a fucking sellout. I'm not saying LeBron's a sellout. That was harsh. I'm sorry if I'm being harsh on LeBron, guys, but you have to understand that to be compared to Michael Jordan, these are like cardinal sins, in my opinion, as a competitor. This is ridiculous. I hold myself like I'm not an NBA player, right? But anyone that's been around me knows I'm literally so hard to be around when like I lose anything. Like I hate losing more than anything in the world. And one thing I love is winning. And to me, actions speak louder than words. LeBron can say that he wants to win all he wants, but his actions don't fully always reflect that, including his decisions to move teams. And now Kyrie Irving leaves to start next season. Kyrie Irving leaves, Scottie Pippen never left. Do you know why? Because Kyrie Irving knows that no matter what he does, even though he made the game-winning three to win the championship, LeBron's the one that gets all the credit. He wants to give himself credit. And Kyrie obviously is a bot himself, so I don't need to talk about that. But who did the Cavs get to replace him? A 3-and-D guy, Jay Crowder. And how about two different, not spot-up shooters, playmakers, Derrick Rose and Dwayne Wade? Now, Derrick Rose didn't work out too well because he only averaged 10 points and missed a bunch of games because he was injured and contemplated not playing basketball ever again. But you know what's funny about Derrick Rose? He went to Minnesota and in that same season averaged 14.5 efficient shooting in the playoffs. I wonder why he did better when he stopped playing with ball-dominant LeBron. And then we have Dwayne Wade, who randomly got traded. I thought it was going to be reuniting. I thought it was going to be reunited and it felt so good. D-Wade, LeBron again. But D-Wade gets shipped off to Cleveland. Why? So the Cavaliers can construct a team around him that's more fit for him. Jordan Clarkson, another guy that can spot up and shoot, maybe create a little bit off the bench. And George Hill, a point guard that it's fine with not creating and fine with not scoring. He just plays his role. But George Hill did far worse this season than he did the previous season. And now you see him with Milwaukee again, thriving off the bench. But with LeBron, he just happened to be shitty. Maybe because, you know, anyone that's played basketball knows that if you're constantly getting the ball and just catching and shooting, you're not getting into any rhythm. And that's why I think LeBron making players better is fucking overrated. One of the people on Twitter, Hoop Guru 24_33, is far worse in the LeBron hating category. But he pointed this out to me that outside of the second best player on his teams, everyone becomes a spot up shooter. And it's so true. LeBron likes doing everything. He likes it. And that's not, and what he didn't do it, he was in Miami and he won more. And with this 2018 Cavs team that he had, it was his best individual season with an unbelievable playoff run that in my time watching basketball, I've never seen someone perform so well in the playoffs. But he struggled to beat a Victor Oladipo Pacers in games. He hit a game winner in game 5, once again, under 3 seconds, not a live play, but still very impressive. I'm not going to call LeBron not clutch. I'm just using that as an example that he likes situations where it's not a live ball, like, you know, open play. It's off the timeout, you know, coach draws up my play, I shoot the ball. And then in the second round, he beats Toronto and completely destroys them. Oh, I think that was the conference finals, actually, if I'm not mistaken. It was the second round. And then he plays against, he had to go, an amazing Game 7 performance in TD Garden, 48 minutes played, unbelievable. But let's look at who he's beating. Jason Tatum is a rookie, and that's their best player. Now, they have the better overall team, but the best player won. And the reason being is because, once again, LeBron had a team that fits around him so well that it maximizes his ability to do everything so well. And then they get to the finals. He plays unbelievably, has that incredible game 1, the famous J.R. Smith, you know, looking like he was on Henny in the game, forgetting the score. LeBron averages 34, 8.5, and 10 on 53% shooting, but they get swept. To give you more context, Kevin Love, 19 and 11. But Am I going to fault LeBron for this performance? No. The fact of the matter is, LeBron's philosophy came to bite him in the ass after LeBron became the best version of himself. But this is Charles Barkley after Game 4, because once again, we excuse LeBron's lack of effort because of his team not being good enough or him already being down 3-0. These are Charles Barkley's direct words after Game 4, and he has agreed to, and they agree on these points. Grant Hill and Chris Webber agreed on these points. Ready? I was so disappointed. His passiveness drained the rest of the energy out of the Cavaliers. He came out passing the ball. I wanted to see somebody fight to the finish. Him to come out and play like that with the game on the line, with the series on the line, and be so passive, you can just see it drain the energy out of the rest of the players because they fed off his body language. And it's so true. He finished with 7 of 12, great field goal percentage with like 20 fucking points. That's disgraceful. If that's the last game you play in the Cavs uniform, I don't care that you've given them their one championship. Michael Jordan never quit. He never just gave up when the odds were stacked against him. Did LeBron quit when he was down 3-1? So why should he quit when he's down 3-0 just because they have a better team? At least put up a fucking fight. That's embarrassing and shambolic to call him the best player of all time when he's doing shit like that. And to continue with winning not being the number one priority, I guess maybe it is. He chooses to go to a Laker team that was literally rebuilding and hadn't been in the playoffs for 6 years because he knows, one, the lifestyle, as we talked about in the last podcast, and because he knows that they can get him good players because, like Miami, they're a big market, big city that can give him the guys. But you know what? He was playing fantastic before the injury, and then he didn't try after the injury after saying he was going playoff mode. I don't give a fuck if you look at the stats. I watched every game and he did the same shit I've been talking about where he didn't take over the fourth quarter in games where Anthony Davis didn't play and the Memphis Grizzlies, who got Ja Morant in the draft for a reason because Marc Gasol had been traded and Mike Conley missed like the whole season. These are the teams that they lost to. And guess who made the playoffs over them? The Clippers, who had Lou Williams as our best player. Guess what? Because we tried harder and because Lou Williams took over games in the fourth, like LeBron didn't. And not only that, he tried to strong-arm the organization into trading for Anthony Davis and just throwing out all the young guys, showing that he has, one, trying to completely change everything, let control, let GM, as we say, and that he doesn't give the young players a chance. Why is Lonzo doing better this season? Why is Brandon Ingram doing so much better this season? Players that are good with creating with the ball doing worse with LeBron. Just goes to show again, LeBron does not make players better unless they're spot-up shooters. He gets you more looks. He helps you win games. No question about it, because he is the best shot creator to play basketball. I won't deny that. He can get you a good shot even if you have me and 4 other my friends on the court, to be honest. But Brandon Ingram has completely taken off this season. But what was the media narrative? He didn't know about, he couldn't handle the pressure of playing with LeBron. First of all, playing for the Lakers is pressure in itself. Mixed with LeBron, yes, it's pressure. But another reason besides development, playing for a worse team, is because Brandon Ingram could have the ball and do his thing. And this is what pissed me off even more than playoff mode, is LeBron James saying, if you want to play for this organization, you can't be blocked. You have to block that outside noise. This is not the organization for you if you're thinking about that. Who the fuck are you to talk about what this organization is? You haven't been a Laker for that long. You're not Magic Johnson or Kobe, bro. Not for this franchise, you're not. So what the fuck do you know about being a Laker? You know about being a great player. You don't know about this organization, this and that. If anything, you're the one fucking up. Take some accountability, which he never does. Or at least doesn't do recently. And then this season. And the reason why I think he's been really good this season is because we always talk about that pass-first mentality. And this season, somebody's on his team that scores more, that plays better defense, and that closes the games, especially at the foul line. That's Anthony Davis. One of the main reasons why LeBron is not amazing in the clutch is because he's always been best at going to the rim. But the reason why he doesn't go to the rim is because he's also not great at the line, which a lot of his late game failures have come from missing clutch free throws. And that's why I think Anthony Davis is arguably the best player on the Lakers right now. And the Bron stands will say, well, they do better with him off the court. Or I'm sorry. They do way worse with LeBron off the court. He's like the highest net rating or whatever. Once again, goes back to the point where LeBron does everything because he's so good at creating shots that the team becomes dependent on him and they look like fish out of water when he comes out of the game because they don't know what they're doing because he does everything for them. And Anthony Davis is an exceptional player, and LeBron's very lucky, and I think LeBron's doing great this season because he's been more serious on the defensive end, and he's embraced that, you know what, I can be a pass-first guy. I'm the second scorer on this team. And now we have the whole Kawhi LeBron debate. And you look at this season when the Clippers have played the Lakers. Opening night, who played better? Kawhi. Who won? The Clippers. Christmas, who played better? Kawhi. Who won? The Clippers. And another thing about LeBron making constant fucking excuses. Do you know what he said after that game? Yeah, I injured my game after I got hit. I got injured again after Patrick Beverley hit me with the screen. Like, you're gonna make excuses after a regular season game, bro? Like, just take your L and walk. Like, just come back next game, bro. You already have a better record than us. And that's not the first excuse he would make this season when he got 30-piece by the Celtics at TD Garden. But then he said, my routine was ruined because I had to go see my son play in Springfield. Come on, bro. You're supposed to be the best player of all time or the best player in the league, and you're making fucking excuses for regular season games where you play like trash? That's what your GOAT does? And then, to end this all off, after all that I've told you, LeBron James has played 80-plus games 3 times, Michael Jordan 11 times. The only thing LeBron has higher than Jordan are totals, because he has played more years. And even in those years, he has accomplished less of what means the most, and that is winning rings. He also has less MVPs and sometimes can't even figure out who he is on the court. And you know what proves his lack of competitiveness more than anything? 2 things. One, that he was actively recruiting Kawhi Leonard to come to the Lakers last summer. And it's almost been 1 year since then. And let it be known that if Kawhi Leonard had come to the Lakers and built the new Warriors, a new super team that was undeniable, LeBron would have been eliminated from the GOAT conversation completely. So you better thank God that Kawhi chose the Clippers for that. Because now it's actually a competition who's going to win the championship. And if Kawhi had the LeBron mentality of joining the Lakers and becoming unstoppable, then the league would suck right now. So all you guys should be on your knees of other teams thanking Kawhi for making the league fair again. And the most appalling thing of all, his first game in front of the Staples Center crowd, LeBron James, Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo got into a full-on fist fight, and he hugs his friend Chris Paul that plays for the other team. I'm sorry, but you can be friends off the court, but when it translates to your lack of competitiveness on the court, when you're grabbing not your teammate, a guy that plays on the other team, when you're trying to show, like, how much of a Laker you are to a franchise that's really not fucked with you for the most part of your career, and that's what you do, I'm sorry, bro. I don't even give a fuck if it's one of my best friends. I will never, if they're on the other team, I don't give a shit what they're on. Like, we will battle. Like, I don't really care. And that's me. I'm not even an NBA player. But that's what you think Jordan or Kobe would be hugging somebody on the other team even if they were friends? That's bullshit, man. That's ridiculous. And so now to end it all off, let's listen to what his peers had to say about him. Old and new. Kevin Durant, Jordan, obviously at 1, and now Iverson. I'm hearing a lot of people these days fronting like they have LeBron over Mike. First of all, I love LeBron. I have nothing but love for LeBron. That's the best player of this generation. One of the best ever. A great husband, a great father, a great role model, and it's even beyond that. But we're talking about Mike, okay? We're talking about Black Jesus himself. And I don't really have much more to say beyond that. Mike is the GOAT, and is always going to be the GOAT. Ultimately, the nicest guy never wins in anything, in my opinion. And it's been true in all my experiences, whether it been fucking women or like just life, everything. To me, you have to have a little bit of asshole in you. And Michael Jordan picked and chose that so well in a team environment. He created a confidence barrier that nobody could beat. And you heard what Jordan said. Michael Jordan never asked me to do something that he didn't fucking do. And LeBron, nah, he doesn't always lead by example. Not at all. Dennis Rodman weighed in on the GOAT debate. And he said, I don't know why y'all discuss the GOAT. I don't know why y'all talk about who the GOAT is. If Michael Jordan played in this NBA, he'd average 50. That was not even a voice recording. That was me trying my best to do Rodman's voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's thoroughly disrespectful to say LeBron has surpassed Michael Jordan because of totals. At the end of the day, Michael Jordan has the highest per game scoring average in both the playoffs and of all time. And LeBron needs to win. Now, is this conversation over? Is the GOAT debate, can LeBron surpass him? I'd honestly leave that window open. A lot of people say it's fully shut because of all the reasons I just said. But you know what? I'll give him the benefit. And you know why I changed? Everybody wants to ask why I changed my opinion. It's because things happen in my life. I used to want to be at a period of time where I was trying to be the nicest person to everybody. And ultimately, it leaves you having more problems than you have, like, you really question yourself a lot, and you snap some. You can't just always be so nice. You get walked all over in life. You truly do. And the best thing I ever did was adjust that and pick my times when to be like blunt, when to meet shit at the source, and when to be, you just don't want to be fake nice. And I think that's what LeBron tries too hard to be. At the end of the day, LeBron may be a better human than Michael Jordan. He probably is. He's an unbelievable off the court person. I think he's awesome. He's a great human. Is he better than Michael Jordan at basketball? Has he accomplished more? And there's this whole, I thought I had the fucking code cracked when I said, LeBron's a better player, Michael Jordan had the better legacy. There's a reason why he had that legacy. Confidence. Not just the eye test, not just he's bigger, stronger, can pass more, because he was bigger, stronger, could pass more in 2011. Ultimately, what did LeBron lack that ended up getting him a championship? Confidence. And Michael Jordan had that from the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the GOAT debate. Or this one. If you want to come up with a better GOAT debate, like Michael Jordan versus Bill Russell, Michael Jordan versus Kareem, I would be more than happy to have that one. But this is the media trying to shove this fucking narrative in your brains, and you young kids are clinging onto it hook, line, and sinker. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, guys, but we weren't born when the best player was ever happened. It just happened. You cannot help when you're born. We were not alive when Michael Jordan was playing. That's the simple facts of the matter, and because you want your GOAT to be in the area you watch so bad, grow up and just research and look into it. But after listening to this, I don't think you have to, because I already did it for you. As always, let me know what you think. I worked so hard on this one, guys. Let me know all your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe. Tell your friends.